Good morning. I want to talk to you about the nature that we inherit. The nature that we inherit is fundamentally an ambitious nature. And the reason for that is that we are chips off the old block. We are the descendants, the progeny of Adam. And Adam's mistake was ambition. He wanted to know himself as God. Instead of knowing God, he wanted to know himself as God. And the way that he would know himself as God, he was told, was through knowledge. And to this very day, we want to know ourselves as gods through knowledge, don't we? For example, our judgments. When you judge another person, you are knowing yourself as a god, as if your judgments were true, as if you could decide good from evil. You see what I mean? But I want to read you something that I wrote because I think it would be helpful. I wrote the following: "The light from God restrains us when we welcome it. Our nature is one of ambition, restlessness, reaching, dissatisfaction, hastiness, and excess. There have to be restraints when we do not have love and understanding, and when we turn from conscience, then there is no restraint. And the only checks to behavior are external ones. Thus we need social sanctions, laws, the court system, and so on to enforce restraint. We tend to get stuck because our nature is inherently ambitious, dreaming of what we want, reaching, acquiring, striving, grabbing, or even stealing. The only earthly restraints to this are the built-in checks and balances of our physical nature, such as the parasympathetic nervous system, which checks the sympathetic one. And then the law, social sanction, and fear. The law, sanction, and fear only restrain but do not change our fundamental ambitious, striving nature. Of course, the best restraint of all is conscience. But it was setting aside conscience that was Adam's ambitious mistake in the first place. We commit the same error over and over, setting aside conscience to get what we want or have been tempted to want. Adam had a choice, but we do it inherently. Then we compound matters by then again setting aside conscience when it makes us aware of our error. And the way we set it aside is by reaching again, for in the act of reaching, we become unaware. So this is very good stuff. So can you see that it was a reaching? It was a wanting, a dreaming of what he wanted, and then a movement. And that movement was the ambitious movement. And to this very day, everything we do practically has that ambition in it. We are restless. Our mind is always going from one thing to another. We want this and we want that. And we dream of getting this and that, and we reach for this, and we buy that, and we're always thinking of the next thing that we want, that we think will bring us fulfillment. You can be having a nice lunch, and while you're having your lunch, you can be thinking of what you're going to have for dinner. Always reaching. That's built into our nature. And what you have to see is that that's what you inherit. Okay? But you can also see that there's something wrong with that. Now, if you could see your error and bear seeing it in the light without trying to duck it, then a most wonderful thing happens. So what I'm going to do now is give you the solution to this. See, you can't change your own nature. The nature that you have, you can't change it. But you can observe it. You can stand back and observe it. Here's the thing. By not resenting what you see, and by quietly admitting your error, you now have a change of heart and mind about it. Before, whatever it was that you wanted and reached for, you excused, rationalized, and if things didn't work out, then you blamed others. And then you kept reaching over and over, hoping to force it to make good on its promise. But now you can see clearly in the light. You can see the lie, see your own weakness and your own wrong, and quietly admit that the truth is right when it shows you that you're wrong. Seeing that the truth does not lie when it shows you you're wrong and humbly admitting it. You now come over to a right attitude. But something more has happened. You're conforming to the light. You believe the light and welcome it, though it be painful, and acknowledge God's laws as being true and having integrity. In other words, you have changed sides. Instead of being an enemy of truth, you're now a friend of truth. Now, welcoming conscience in your life, it becomes a cogent force. It restrains your ambitious, out-of-control nature. And as long as you remain close to your intuition, in other words, every day practicing your meditation and wanting it in your life, it begins to make changes. It saves you from sin and also gives you a new nature, one of God and answerable to God, as it restrains your animal proclivities and as it restores balance and health in your body. It also devastates the wrong identity that came from the world and that now lives through you and acts through you. Ambition was Adam's error, wanting to be God instead of knowing God. And to this day, we, the progeny of Adam, are ambitious for knowledge. For through raw knowledge we can know ourselves as gods, judging good from evil, making pronouncements, and seeking to impress others with our knowledge. By fact-fondling and manipulating word things, we know ourselves as gods. And that is why we are lost in our thinking all the time. We hope that the answer to our problems and the knowledge to make us great will emerge from our thinking. But we become subject to our imagination and to thinking and end up lost down there. Now do you see that that's the nature we have? You can't change that nature, but you can watch it. And you can incline toward the truth and allow God's light to enter your life. And when His light enters your life, it does many wonderful things. It enlightens your mind. It gives you a right attitude. In other words, you see things the way they are. Before, you saw everything backwards. You saw good as bad and bad as good, and what made you feel good you thought was good, and what made you feel bad you thought was bad. And people who catered to you, you thought they were your friends, and people who told you the truth, you thought they were wet blankets, and so on. You had everything backwards. So now, if you can see that, you see the lie is the lie. You see your own weakness. You see how easily, what a sucker you are for lies. But now not resenting seeing it, not resenting seeing the truth, not resenting others, realizing that they can't help themselves either, not resenting God, not resenting the light of conscience for showing you, not resenting yourself, not resenting anything, just seeing. See, if you, for example, in the past, maybe you saw that you were impatient, or you saw that you were messing your kids up, or you saw something about yourself that wasn't so good, but then you rolled up your sleeves and you ambitiously tried to change yourself. Do you see it's ambition again? You ambitiously tried to change yourself, and you rushed around huffing and puffing and striving and tried to make yourself good, and you couldn't. When you couldn't, you resented seeing it. See? Or you saw your own proclivities. You saw your own animal nature, your lusting, greedy, hungry, voracious, thirsty nature. You saw that rising. See, the animal rises. When we spiritually fall, then the animal rises. And you saw that, and you tried to hide it. You tried to cover it up. You tried to repress it. You see what I mean? But it was still there. So now what you need to do is learn to watch and to allow God's light to do the work. See, His light can change you. What you need is a new nature, one that answers to God, one that is moved by Him, by what comes from Him, by seeing the truth. When you see the truth and know the truth and love the truth, then things are simple. It's easy to do what's right. And God will restrain your lower self. He will restrain the rabbit thoughts. He will restrain your animal nature and hold the darkness that now has entered. See, the thing is, when we reach for wrong, then darkness enters. And then it talks to you in your mind, and it begins to control you. And it takes advantage of your weakness and your gullibility. And it uses you as its pawn, as its tool, you see. So He will restrain it, and He will give you light so that every day you can see a little bit more and realize a bit more and understand a bit more. And every day a bit more natural control. You will find that in the light you will change, and your ego will come back to being a natural ego again, like you were when you were a young person. You know, yeah, you were a little selfish and so on, and emotional, but you were innocent. You weren't corrupted yet, corrupted by So what is it that corrupts us? When we reach, when you reach for something ambitiously, what you reach for, it's inside of you. What you reach for, you become subject to. And something of it gets into you. Do you understand that? So that's how corruption occurs. That's how you become corrupt. And what is it that corrupts us the most? Yeah, things corrupt us. Drugs corrupt us. But what corrupts us the most? Judgment. That's right. Judging other people and hating them. You could say judgment, hatred, resentment. It's judgment. Because you see, that's the quintessential act of playing God, judging. God is the great judge of the universe, and his judgments are true, you see. But when you play God, you judge. You see what I mean? And you come in conflict with God. And your judgments are based on imperfect knowledge, so your judgments are imperfect. There's something ugly about judgment. When other people judge you, see, when they look down their nose upon you, or so on, you see it, don't you? And you don't like it. Well, when you go around judging others, usually secretly. And the worst part is that you judge your own family. You judge your husband. That's right. You judge your kids. And then you feel guilty for your judgments. And then in your guilty, you spoil them. And you make things worse. So you need to butt out of other people's lives. Stand back and stand back and watch those judgments and those resentments. And now stand in disagreement with them, quiet disagreement. And learn to meditate, to be centered, and for patience, and for the light to stream in. You need the light to stream in and quieten your ambitious nature and restrain your animal impulses and give you enlightenment so that you can see what's true. You can see the lie is the lie. See, that's what you need to do. Now you see the whole world enslaved to one lie after another. And you too have been enslaved to lies. Now you have to see it. And you have to learn to wait upon God. And he will save you from all of it. And it begins with the most simple thing, seeing your own wrong and admitting it quietly in your heart, instead of resenting seeing it, instead of rolling up your sleeves and trying to change yourself, or instead of excusing your behavior or blaming other people, just quietly see it. And that's how it begins.